Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Disrupting Podcast with Alex Cutler, myself, Dana Donovic. Today we are privileged to have Blair LaCorte of AEye, a new LiDAR company that is going public via SPAC merger here very soon. Blair, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are excited to learn about what you guys are doing, what the future's like, and Alex, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. So Blair, again, thank you guys so much for jumping on. So we have a lot of the questions not only generated by us, but also our followers on Twitter, as well as across all of our social media platforms. So all of them, a lot of these questions are on their minds, and I would appreciate if you could answer them. So first off, can you walk us through exactly what your company does, as well as what your vision is for the next 10 years?
Sure, and I'll let that pun go. What our vision is. Actually, we're a vision company. So, there's been a number of sensors that have augmented machines that either move or things that track things that move. And LiDAR has been around for about 60 years. It's the only deterministic sensor, so it is the most accurate, most reliable. The way that most people would relate to why LiDAR is becoming very popular today is it's the only thing that really can be better than a human. So if you really want to put humans hands off, eyes off, autonomy into anything, you're going to add a LiDAR system.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems like the future. We know that you guys are raising what's like 455 million in gross proceeds through the SPAC merger with CF Finance. The ticker is CFAC, to develop what you guys call, an intelligent LiDAR. How is your technology different from other LiDAR systems that we're familiar with? And is it fair to say your technology is superior?
Well, from your lips to God's ears, I love the way you gave me that lead in. Look, this is, I'm going to, put this in terms that are pretty stark for, say, an investor. At the end of the day, you invest in a macro. The macro is vision systems and LiDAR. Everyone in the world, including Elon Musk, has admitted this is the next big generation of technology. The second question, to your point, is how is it different? Most systems in the world start in hardware, move to software, and then get into data and networking. When you take a look at this technology today, there's a first generation of LiDAR. You've seen it in movies where there's a laser pointer coming out of a gun, or you've seen it in some sci-fi flicks where the screen is covered with laser shots and they're tracking objects moving through the scene at any given time. So the way to think about LiDAR and our LiDAR is the first generation of LiDAR was what we'll call static. It runs a pattern, it shoots out like a camera, same density, same distance everywhere in the screen. It brings that data back and it tries to figure out what it's detecting. The second generation is a system approach. We call it adaptive LiDAR. Very similar to when chips started. They just did speeds and beads. When you got to Intel, they put a system on a chip. Think of what we do in adaptive LiDAR is putting intelligence into how you shoot out those points to interrogate the environment. So best example I can give you is that humans are extremely good at interrogating their environment. 92% of accidents in cars are caused by distraction. They're not caused because humans couldn't see something. So if we can put a computer in the car that doesn't get distracted, the next step is to make it intelligent. So would you change your scan pattern on the highway versus the city when it's raining versus when it's a sunny day? Of course you would. So what adaptive LiDAR does is gives you that situational awareness. We're fortunate enough that the majority of our management team at one point in their career had worked in the military building these kind of systems that were more adaptive versus static.
Love that. That's awesome. And you guys are obviously have military experience on your team.
Yes, that's exactly true. Look, it's about perspective. There's a lot of misconceptions in LiDAR. First being that LiDAR is a new technology. It's been around for 60 years and in fact heavily used in telecommunications, defense, and aerospace for the last 25 years. The second is that it's a winner-take-all technology, very similar to how humans see the world. We process with our eyes, we get visual inputs, but 40% of your vision, believe it or not, is impacted by your other senses. So when you hear a sound, you may foveate right. When you see someone you recognize, you will actually increase your scan rate to actually acquire that target. So what we're trying to do here is to actually bring a new sensor into the world that augments the sensors that you have today. So when you look at the market, anywhere you have a radar system or an RFID system, a camera, there's a chance that you will probably see a LiDAR system adding in that distance and density and that certainty that you will actually understand not only what the object is, but what the object will do so that you can predict and actually take evasive action.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gotcha. So obviously our team has spoken with many CEOs from a lot of prominent other EV companies, a vast majority of them, and all of them have said that LiDAR is a good assisted piece of equipment. However, they say that it might not be the best system for autonomous driving level 4 and 5. What do you say about this criticism that LiDAR has limits?
Right. Well, listen, every technology in some sense has limits. It depends how it's applied. And I think the mistake that many people have made is assuming how LiDAR will be applied. As I alluded to earlier, one of the reasons we built an adaptive and open LiDAR is that it can be integrated with other systems. So the auto assist systems you see in your car today have actually been moving very, very quickly. Where it started with, assisted braking, and then, assisted parking, and now it's moving into existing cruise control. So LiDAR, actually, to move to the higher levels of autonomy is a required sensor. So today, the only way that you actually get to some level of autonomy is to have, say, a camera and a radar work together. A LiDAR system can actually work alone, or it can augment those systems. So I think it's about, how things are going to be applied. I can't believe that there will be an autonomous car anytime in the next 10 years without a LiDAR system as part of that solution.
Good question.
Well,
Absolutely
you
agree.
mentioned, a lot of the existing cars, the newer cars. I have an Audi that's got all these bells and whistles. If I get near, a shopping cart, it's like a fire alarm. But just to put things in perspective, how many different components, sensors, cameras, radar, etc., are needed to effectively achieve an autonomous driving vehicle, like a passenger vehicle?
If you look back 5 years ago, there was a big push towards robo-taxis. And so at that point, it was all about redundancy. You could have seen $250,000 worth of sensors on top of a car. Clearly, that's not a car that you and I are going to buy when you need to add 20, 30, 40 sensors, and it's very expensive. What I would tell you is that it's really about autonomy on demand. Do you just want autonomy when you're in the city and there's pedestrians coming at you? Do you want autonomy on the highway? Do you want autonomy full time? Our belief is that it will move slowly as customers start to pick up and are willing to actually value and pay for this technology. No car company in the world actually says, I want to wake up and add another sensor. What they say is, can you increase my safety rating? Because my consumers will react to that and understand I care about them. Or can you add a new feature like highway autopilot? Now, if you can do both of those things, you have a winner. Why highway autopilot? Because it's the thing that cameras and radar can't do. High speeds, high distances, small objects. And that's where you don't want what we'll call the Christmas tree effect. When you said that, I actually laughed a little bit because we have so much redundancy in short distances that there's a lot of false positives. Rather tell you that there's something there than miss it. When you're on the highway, you do not have that luxury to have a false positive and jam on the brakes at 65 miles an hour.
Sure.
And at 65 miles an hour, you need over 100 meters to take evasive action. This is a problem that we spent a lot of time on in the military. And in fact, we spent a lot of time at speeds much, much faster than this. One of the fun things your users may want to do is we just put out a video the other day where we tracked a bullet.
A bullet. I saw that.
Yeah. Now, again, it may seem a little bit gratuitous, but that was thought to be impossible to have a LiDAR system adapt that quickly to something at speed. That's really what you want when you're driving down the highway. And I can tell you the car companies understand it. 80% of the RFQs, which are the bids over the next 3 or 4 years for integrating into your car, are for highway LiDAR systems.
Sure.
Not for short distance LiDAR systems, but highway. So what I'm promising you here today is in the next couple of years, decisions are being made today. So we're locking up things today. But in the next couple of years, you're going to start to see things in your car that you're going to be very excited about.
But That's awesome. That point, are we more likely to see commercial vehicles deploy this level of technology first because it's on the freeway versus a passenger vehicle?
So it's a great question. I think that there are two different business models, which is actually leads us into one of the reasons a lot of investors will ask us. First question they'll always ask us is, hey, listen, tell us about how your technology is different. Everyone else in the world is static. The world isn't static. Ours is adaptive. We have situational awareness. We can show you through our history with the military, how that situational awareness makes us superior for adoption. Technology is number one. Then they ask us, well, how's your business model different? We actually have a very different business model for consumer automotive than we do for commercial trucking. And what we're doing is we're working with the largest companies in the world. So for instance, Continental, you may remember them from tires, but in reality, they're a $55 billion company that's been around for 150 years. And almost every car that you've ever owned in your life has been impacted by Continental's technology. So in the ADAS, remember the auto assist versus the full autonomy, they've sold over 100 million radar and over 50 million LIDAR over the last 5 years. So what we're doing in the high volume automotive to make sure your car has the right technology is we've licensed our high performance LIDAR, our long distance LIDAR to them. It's now their LIDAR. So we're betting, those are our customers. We're betting on those customers to bring it to their installed base. For instance, Continental has 25 of the largest OEMs in the world. We got to be careful about talking about who they are. Now, in the trucking industry, we can actually go into a different direction. We can sell direct. It's a B2B model. Yes, they do have highway and high volume, but they also own the assets already. So it's a very different sale. They can integrate the technology in a different way. Most of our competitors in the industry think of this as a one size fits all. They build a hardware and they hand it out to these different markets. We sell through channel to certain markets. We also customize using software to other markets. So when you're betting on us, you're betting on the macro. You're also betting that both our disruptive technology and our disruptive business model will actually drive adoption faster. We don't think it's a winner take all, but we do think that this is the right approach.
I like the situational awareness, and definitely like I was in the military, 10-year veteran. I could definitely say that when you're in operational, like you have to adapt. There's no way that to have one fixed point and just think that that's going to be it. You have to adapt. And to hear that from you, I don't hear that from a lot of other companies, especially when it comes to LiDAR. I have reached out to them and their technology, they're fixed on the one single point. And we've seen some others that have exclusive partnerships and they have one specific design. They're not adjusting to it. It's just going to be a part of their vehicle. To see that you're going to be adapting your technology in software or maybe even just design really gives you guys a little bit of a heads up. So obviously there's a big market for LiDAR. We've seen that there's a lot of competitors, but how big is the market for advanced driver assist systems, and how quickly do you see LiDAR technology penetrating the auto industry as well as many other industries?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for your service. I don't think we talk about that enough, about doing something that's bigger than yourself. Secondarily, you would relate to this when you are doing something and trying to implement a problem in the military where you know that your friends and comrades and people you're tasked with protecting are at risk. You're not worried about whether it's LiDAR or it's radar or it's a camera. You're worried about getting it to work. One of the things that's very gratifying to me is that a large portion of our management team does have a military background, and therefore they think of things not religiously as a technology problem, but as a problem to solve to save people's lives. So we are really focused on, we may have built systems to protect us from missiles in the past. We're now building systems to protect us from hurting a pedestrian in the future. So sorry for that tangent, but I think there is a mindset that is very different from where we come from.
Definitely.
So how big is the market? Look, I'm gonna tell you that anywhere there's a camera today, and you could put in a laser system that could see better than a camera, you're going to add a laser system to that, or you're going to replace that laser system. And it's not just in the automotive market. A lot of people relate to that. But today, the industrial market's a very big market. Most people don't realize that stoplight that you see every day costs hundreds of thousands of dollars and tens of thousands of dollars a year to actually be maintained to make sure you're safe. Imagine if we could upgrade those very simply, adding in LiDAR systems that would allow you to do motion forecasting or predictive stopping, where you could actually decide how to even make it safer. A very small cost to build into infrastructure that exists today. In the rail market, again, existing infrastructure. What if you had a system that not only looked for things on the track, but was aware enough that when you reached a platform, that it would actually look at the platform, extend its view, and actually try to make sure that there's nothing actually entering its view that could hurt it, or a crossing. These are the type of things that we envision, is that autonomy is going to be applied to almost anything for safety and efficiency. And the real question is, how do we enable the companies that are closest today to use this technology effectively? Our big push is not on LiDAR, it's about LiDAR adoption.
I like that. And that's definitely, like, I love what you said. It's not specifically one sector. And I've seen that across not only like many other companies, but that's the problem, is that other LiDAR companies, they're focusing on one specific sector. Like, let's say company A, I am focusing on automotive. All right. You're limiting yourself. You're limiting your TAM, your total addressable market. And there's another one that's like, we're focusing on industrial, like moving cranes, whatever, or just moving around warehouses, where you're letting your adaptive business model as well as your adaptive technology being utilized across all spaces, from automotive to defense, big in defense. I'm pretty sure that's going to be utilized substantially, to industrial, commercial. And then, like you said, cameras across, like you're driving around, lights. I think even cameras, like security systems, definitely need this type of technology.
Brilliant. So I think that's amazing.
For sure. And look, the other thing that I want that's embedded in your comment is my dad would always say, they're not a partner unless you know how they actually benefit from this. So part of our differentiation in our model is, what you will see is we're selling through channel, we're partnering, we're working with the best of breed in each industry to make sure that we understand it. We don't assume that we will understand everything. We assume that our partners will actually bring value to our customers as well as we will.
Well, and I appreciate both of you guys touching down on that, because I'll be the first to admit, when I first thought of like autonomous technology, I primarily associate that with passenger and commercial vehicles. But little do you know, you can apply this technology to so many other sectors. So, if you can you just roll off a few others? I know there's you mentioned railroads, but you have to figure even like warehouse logistics, maybe even drones.
Right. Absolutely. And the way our model works is we sell to high volume automotive, which means that there's high levels of functional safety, years of testing. We sell through partners called tier ones. Like Continental and Hella are two of the ones that are the largest in the world at integrating technology in your car. In the other markets, so for instance, commercial trucking, we work with both tier ones. We also sell direct. We have a large penetration today in, as you mentioned, rail, intelligent traffic systems, which are stoplights or infrastructure that needs to be smarter, watching things move, security, aerospace and defense. Each of these markets where you have an asset that's either moving or tracking things that are moving can benefit from a better deterministic sensor. So this is, in some ways, it's an evolution. We've seen how effective it's been in things from barcodes out of Vietnam to GPS out of Desert Storm to RFID out of Afghanistan to LIDAR systems out of Iraq. And you're seeing a bunch of technology that's moved from the military into the commercial space to do good, to increase safety and to increase productivity in those different areas.
I love that. So that's amazing.
Listen, thank you. The way we position ourselves is that one of the things we did is we worked with the people we've worked with in the past, and we developed a commercial off-the-shelf product. So rather than actually go after large government contracts to start out with, we were told to build a commercial off-the-shelf product so that we could both drive down costs and make it ubiquitous. So we've tried to learn from history. Certain people have gone deep early in one market. We've stayed actually very utilitarian and very heterogeneous in how we can be applied. And now as we start to roll out, the two messages we send to our investors are, one is, you can see Continental just announced they're already getting samples off of their line, and they're building a manufacturing line. So we will be the first mass market system available from a tier one in 2024. In those other markets like government, aerospace, rail, we are just starting to actually announce, for instance, our partners in each space, we'll be starting to deliver our product in fourth quarter this year. So I know you alluded to it earlier. We're in the early stages of this. In the next 2 or 3 years, our prediction is that there'll be an amazing uptake of LiDAR, and we feel we're well positioned. We have a manufacturing set of partners in the automotive space And we just announced Samina, one of the largest manufacturers in the world, to manufacturers, and we will customize for these other markets, whether it be aerospace and defense or rail. Slightly different business model, same components, same technology.
Awesome. Speaking of your technology is the only LiDAR that has been validated by a third party to show record-setting range, detection, classification. Why don't other LiDAR companies seek this third-party validation, and what does this mean for AI?
Sure. My first comment would be, I know it sounds surprising, but let me at least give a little bit of perspective. I think that there is a little bit of fear in the industry because there are ways in early industry to change things that would make yourself look better, and for you to actually let a third party test you without the trust that you'll be treated fairly, there is a little bit of fear. That said, it doesn't make any sense in the world. Customers are trying to figure out how to determine what performance metrics a technology has. We're in contact with all of our competitors today, and we've also been working with government agencies, as you can see, with the largest organizations that test product. We feel as a leader, we should put the stuff out there. In the past, there have been some people who have released data. One of the most notable would being Google did release some data. We're going one step beyond that. We're not just releasing data, but we're releasing the actual metrics. And we hope that as a leader, we will drive others in our industry to feel more comfortable to actually step up, and that will help our customers. Again, I'm going to come back to this theme over and over again. When you're investing in us, we believe the macro is going to happen. The LiDAR is going to be in almost everything. The question is, what type of LiDAR and how quickly will it be adopted? So you will see our business model maniacally focused on trying to help consumers get it into things faster. We want them to make money. We want the businesses to make money. We want the consumers to get the value. So we're actually taking a leadership position in this, putting our metrics out there.
Well, I think it's fantastic because it's like, hey, this is my company, and I have nothing to hide. I'm so comfortable putting this out there, and hopefully, you guys will kind of initiate this, everyone else's, all the other competitors to do the same. So there's this level of transparency.
Listen, at the end of the day, it can make us better too. By getting out there and putting this stuff up, we should be driving each other. When I say that our competitors are interested, we should be driving each other to be better. Yeah. So let's get out there. Let's have excuse the pun. Let's have a shootout, right? And bring it on.
Well, and so you touched down on the business model. Can you elaborate a little bit more on just the modular system itself and like this configurable software?
Sure. Now, this was an early decision. And I, at the risk of giving you too much context, 10 years ago, people were just thinking about how do I get a hardware system that collects a bunch of photons? They weren't thinking about necessarily the implementation. They knew LiDAR was going to be deployed. We took a fundamentally different approach at that point in time. We realized that at the end of the day, this shouldn't be a hardware business. None of these other businesses, radars started at $1,500. They're at $40, $50. Cameras, the same thing. So we decided to build a model that was not dependent on hardware. How do you do that? You drive the cost of hardware down. You drive the innovation of hardware up. In order to do that, it needs to be modular. So if a better hardware comes out from a supply chain, you can plug and play it. It makes these guys compete against each other, but it also gives them an opportunity that they don't have to wait a whole cycle, 2 years to get into your product. So by putting all the complexity into the software and by designing the original designs for the hardware and then licensing those to the supply chain, we basically set up a competitive environment where they know that if they can give us a better piece of hardware, we'll integrate it back in. So it increases our spin. We can change a product in a month. We don't have to change 2 years because most of it is designed to be controlled by the software. The bullet video that we talked about earlier is a great example. People would think that's impossible. We took a commercial off-the-shelf product, and in a day, we just changed the software to actually be able to move from a 10 hertz scanning pattern to 24,000 hertz scanning pattern, right? So in certain applications, you'll say, I want better speed. We took the same system that we were scanning 150 meters at for a city where you can't see beyond that with buildings, and we pushed it out to 1 kilometer. Why? Because a trucking partner that we had said, I need to be able to see overpasses at least 1 kilometer away, and I want to be able to see lane changes that far because as you alluded to
Yeah.
earlier, a car may need 100 meters, but a truck needs 500 meters at the speed, weight, and steering capabilities that it has. So again, we're trying to put this technology into people's hands and actually drive their value faster.
I like that. I like the customization. I don't think haven't heard any other kind of LiDAR company that has the ability to customize in such a short period of time.
It's very clever.
Yeah, it's definitely it. Again, I'm gaining a lot of just hints of military, and I'm like, you have to be flexible. You have to make it work somehow. So whatever technology
right,
you have, make it work.
It even goes. I mean, when you look at just in a funny story, which is even if you take a look at our name, the name AEye came from artificial eye, which was our nod to biomimicry. Humans are extremely good at intelligent scanning. Computers are extremely good at applying power and consistency. So we're building an artificial eye. But the fun part about our name is every time you say it, you have to say AEye. Why? Because this is back to this customization. We do edge processing, and we allow you with an AEye program to customize how you scan the environment. So every time you say our name, we're subconsciously brainwashing you, right? That, hey, listen, it's not only how we actually take the sensor business from one place to another, but it's how we actually do it in a way that gives homage to biomimicry and a lot of things that we've learned in the military. We spent a lot of money defending ourselves. We'd like to actually give that technology back into the consumer environment so that we can have better cars.
I like that. And it's going to be really good to go in my next question. I'm very excited for this one because obviously there's been a huge debate between these two technologies. It's what's better, LiDAR, camera. We've heard it from Tesla's CEO and co-founder, Elon Musk. And he's like, I don't like LiDAR. LiDAR's not needed. You can use cameras to be able in depth. My belief is that why not have both? You're basically creating an eye where you can detect the object from far away, and then you can get even better depth perception with LiDAR. Why can't you have both? What's your thoughts on this debate?
Well, listen, you already answered the question. It's like saying, would you rather not have hearing or not have smell or not have sight? When you take a look at biomimicry, you will have a primary sensor, which one comes first, but you'll always have orthogonal data for both redundancy and acquisition of a target. So whether you use the beautiful contrast of cameras, which they do have beautiful contrast, or you use the long distance of radar, but then it bounces off a lot of things, or you use the LiDAR system, it's not so much that you wouldn't want to use all three. You need two things. One is, how do you design your software to be able to take those inputs, which is very doable today. The second piece is there needs to be a value proposition. When Elon made that comment many years ago, LiDAR was still $75,000. Remember, I told you to put stuff on a car, it was $250,000.
Yep.
LiDAR costs have come down very much like cameras and radar, and I don't think it's an either or. It's a decision. You could just do one or the other, but most likely you're going to do both.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I've been seeing people being posted across social media platforms, and you can see is that the system isn't perfect. Like you can't just have a camera. You need to have both. It's like you said, it's an eye. You need to have every single sensor to make it work. So I definitely agree. Yeah,
look, and I'll leave you, with the thought again. When you have to have full autonomy, which means hands off, eyes off, the stuff you're doing today is assist. You're still there in the car. You need to pay attention, but most of the time it's making you a better driver. But when you need to know that you can take hands off, eyes off, you're going to need a deterministic sensor. Radars guess what comes back. They bounce off things they guess. Cameras take pixels. They bounce off everything, and you guess what you're seeing by contrast and light. But LiDAR doesn't do that. There's a reason why when you take a look at a gun sight that there's a LiDAR red dot on the target, because LiDARs don't make mistakes. They will actually be better than a human, and you don't have to guess. That doesn't mean we wouldn't combine the things together. And in fact, the sniper pod that Louis' team worked on, which is in every military jet we have today, we use LiDARs, cameras, radars, ultrasonics. I laughed for him. One of his claims to fame as the stuff on the UFOs have come out. When you see that video of the fighter jet pilots and they're trying to track those objects going there,
Gone.
That's the sniper pod. That's
Love
our
it.
targeting system trying to keep up with whatever you believe that is. But most of the time, you don't think about the technology that we've already applied out there in the world today. All we're doing again, the same thing we did with GPS, right? We're bringing it down so that consumers and businesses can use it to be more productive. And the best weapon we have in the world is to make America the strongest economic country so that we can both help other countries and we can actually defend ourselves. So at the end of the day, this is just an extension, right? It's an extension of making America stronger.
Well, and Blair, you've talked about the cost and how over time the cost has evolved, gotten a lot cheaper. I come from the health and wellness quantified self space, and I know the 3-axis accelerometer sensor in my iWatch is rather cheap. That the technology's existed for it's almost antiquated. It's been around forever. But is it fair to say that like a lot of the components used to achieve this comprehensive package of autonomous driving are affordable, have been affordable, and like what? Just for my own edification, like.
Right. Look, I've spent a lot of time in supply chain over my career. I will simplify this down to my level, which is, look, at the end of the day, there's a couple different ways to bring down cost, right? One is pure innovation. And there is pure innovation. We're using different materials. We're using different wavelengths. We're using different, especially software programs to analyze data. That is happening. The second way is to actually change system design to make it simpler. So for instance, in our system, we basically came down to 4 components, right? And those 4 components drive everything. So it's much simpler system than you would have seen 5 years ago, or you'll see from our competitors, where they have hundreds of lasers in the same thing. We have one laser, one tiny MEMS that if you took a pencil and put it on a piece of paper, that's the size of this mirror. So it's impervious to most shock and vibes because it's so small, it doesn't move when things happen. The third piece is a receiver, very much like what you use in your camera that just retrieves the signal. And then the fourth is an SoC, which everyone knows, it's how you program the software. So very simple. First thing is there will be innovation, and we're pushing towards that. Second is simplicity. The third is purely volume. So when you get more volume, you drive down the cost of manufacturing for hardware components. Because the software, obviously, very, very high margin, and you can just replicate that easily. So the big piece to hit is how do we drive up volume? And that's where you help, the consumer helps. High volume automotive, 300, 400, 500, there's 88 million cars done a year, will actually make that industrial system that will make your train safer or your traffic light safer even less expensive. So we actually, and you alluded to this earlier, we don't sell into one market. We use the same components for every market, and therefore automotive is actually as big a piece of our strategy in defense as anything else. It's driving down the cost, increasing the reliability.
Well, and you talked to earlier about your amazing partnership with Continental, but we also know from doing our own homework that you guys have strategic partnerships with the likes of like GM, Intel, Subaru, just to name a few. I mean, there's some killer partnerships. Are you able to elaborate on those partnerships and like what they entail in the short or long term?
Sure. I'll elaborate on our mentality towards it, but it harkens back to the fact that this is a global deployment and it's a system design, and we want the best partners who are the smartest and most innovative in every segment. So the first thing we did was we actually spent more time getting strategics to invest. So I don't know the exact number, but I believe we have more strategics than the rest of the LiDAR industry combined. The plus to that is we have a lot of feedback. The minus to that is we get a lot of feedback. The second piece to this is that we also, these are potential partners for deployment or our customers. So we split our partnerships into base R&D partnerships, deployment partnerships, and then actually customer partnerships. And if you look at our list on our website, you'll see that falls out pretty straight down those lines.
I like that. So like members of your core executive team sent from NASA and Lockheed Martin, as well as industry leaders from other LiDAR companies. Why should like shareholders be excited about this team? Why are you confident about AEye, and will be able to reach its financial milestones. Are you very confident in that?
Sure. And, go back to a common theme, right, which is my touchstone. I was an investor for the middle part of my career. And while I thought it was good before I came in, I got to work at TPG with some of the greatest investors in the world. And they taught me about focus. When you're going to make an investment, do you believe in the macro? The macro is going to happen. I believe in that. What's the micro? Do you believe there's differentiation? I've explained to you our adaptive LiDAR and our ability to go to market in a way that others can't go to market. I think the third one and the magic piece to me is that it's all about the management team. It's about the jockey. So what I love about our management team is we have people who are experts in LiDAR, but not just LiDAR, many sensors. And we also, more than half our team comes from global deployments of both technology and vertical market durable good products. So we've got 4 people on our team who have done IPOs before and have built multi-billion-dollar companies. If you're going to bet on a team, I hope you bet on a team that over the next couple of years, has that kind of experience. And when things change, we find ways to take advantage of that. So that, I can't be prouder to serve with the people on my team. And I'd, really encourage people to go up to our website and take a look at some of the backgrounds. You will note that we are not LiDAR agnostic. We're not LiDAR focused in our backgrounds, and that we have a tremendous amount of experience outside of just pure technology deployment.
But all of which is incredibly complementary. That's an excellent answer.
Excuse the pun. Thank you.
Well, so this is one question I think a lot of retail investors will be most curious to know. If you've been following the SPAC market, you know that the behaviors and trends of SPACs in 2021 are vastly different than 2020. So we've particularly seen too well-established unicorn companies with great performance metrics, deSPAC, and then they keel over in price and they fall below the NAV. We know that CFAC, the SPAC that you guys are merging with, the previous high was like $14.50, and it's currently trading around the $10 NAV price. Can you speak to the $2 billion valuation of AEye SPAC deal and why you think it's fairly valued?
Sure. And look, there are vagaries of markets and there's trends. And so when you take a look at this, you'll note certain things about the way we've approached the market, is that we're in this for the long term. And when I say the long term, it means every single year we intend to move forward to drive our positioning in the market. The second piece of this is we have a very different financial model. Because we're working through partners and because we're able to license technology, you'll see that we look more like a Mobileye or an ARM Limited for those investors who have looked at automotive technology in the past. Very, very high EBITDA. We've been very conservative compared to our peers on revenue. So, if there, our stock has traded consistently where we want it to trade. We've been very pragmatic about what PR we put out. It doesn't, this may sound like an obvious statement, but for someone who's deciding to invest their money in us, it doesn't help us to drive the stock price before the IPO. What we'd like to do is have you get in at the right price, at a very fair price, and to actually drive your stock price up over time. So anything that's moving before your IPO is not really about our company and our plan. It's about how people are playing the SPAC market, which is fine. It's a different type of investor. We're looking for those investors who believe in us, and we're going to reward them.
Absolutely. And like I'm getting the vibe of the fact that you don't want to overpromise and then underperform. You're gonna this is what we believe. This is strictly what we're gonna do, and you're gonna hit the mark. And most likely throughout the whole process, you're gonna overperform. Like, it'd be smarter with that. You don't want to go and potentially miss out, and then it'll cause issues with the company overall performing and the value of the stock in the future. So I definitely agree.
And listen, for me, I've been around this world for a long time. At this point, we want to align with our investors. So at the end of the day, investors are putting money in and they want to see their stock go up over time. And so that's our focus. Our focus isn't momentum playing or putting out hype or things like that. We're going to, what I promise you is we're going to be very transparent. We're going to be very pragmatic. And, we're going to go out there to be one of the top 1 or 2 LiDAR companies in a massive market over the next couple of years. I don't think the market size is argument. With us, you're betting on what I'll call a second generation technology, and I believe a third generation business model. where we have partners that are in the market today that are incented to help us win because we're helping them win.
Absolutely. I love that. Like you've said, investors are known as savvy and likely are aware of the minimum projected revenue over the next 3 years for you and the substantial burn rate. How do you address any investors' concerns over the next 3 years?
Sure. Well, look, I mean, this is back to liquidity events. I did a couple of IPOs in the late 90s when NASDAQ opened up, and it was an opportunity to drive liquidity into your company so that you could sustain for the long term. Most of the companies that you'll see today, the tech companies, the named companies, either the companies that were funded then are part of them, or those are the companies. So it was an opportunity in time. I look at the SPAC market. I've done several SPACs out of my family office as a personal investor. They had been special situations. The special situation that you're looking at today is that everyone knows that auto tech will happen. And just like it took Tesla a little while to raise the money to actually get EVs going, we believe that there's a 2-3 year cycle that we need to continue to invest to actually make automotive technology happen. The one thing I'd like to emphasize is that if revenue isn't the metric that you should look at over the next couple of years, there's a lot of metrics that show the fact that this market is moving and that it's going to explode in a positive way in the very short term. So it really is about what your technology is, what it can do, the performance metrics, the safety, can it be applied to different things, how many people are you working with, what channels are you setting up, the business model, the financial model that you're doing. So we actually, in our last investor meeting, I encourage people to go. I realize it's an hour, but to go and listen, and we talk a little bit about what metrics we think we'll be driving over the next year. And I think you'll get good transparency into what's happening with us and why it's such a good bet.
Well, that's a great answer. And I just have to ask, it's kind of a two-part question here. We clearly, this innovating and developing this level of technology, it's expensive. Where are all the costs at? And also too, like, what challenges do you see that you're going to have to tackle here to achieve what you're looking for?
Sure. We're very proud of the fact that if you look at many of the people who come before us, they've spent 4 or 5 times as much as we have as a company, and that's very easy to take a look at in our filings. But a lot of people have spent money building a business around hardware, and therefore they spent money building factories, and they built money trying to vertically integrate every technology that they could think of so they could control it. And the reality, as we talked about earlier, is this market, the adoption, I believe, especially in automotive, is going to be driven by driving the hardware costs down, driving it down to where cameras and radar systems are, driving it down in the short run less than $1,000. So we actually did not spend an awful lot of money we didn't build out a factory. We partnered with people and helped them build out factories for us. So I think in the past, money has been spent in areas which I think are not necessarily core competencies of the companies. I think in the future, R&D is a big deal. Again, as I said, in order to drive down costs, there's 3 components to it. One is innovation. The second is system design. And the third is patents around how you process and how you drive volume faster through the system. And that an investment now pays off handily over the next couple of years. It takes you a year or two to actually drive that through the supply chain so you can reduce costs. The beauty of our market is most people we sell to understand when they close a deal with us today, they actually talk about how we're driving costs down over the next 5 years because they're long-term contracts, and they appreciate the fact that's where we're spending our money.
Definitely.
Well, Blair, gosh, I think you've said it all. Is there any final message you want to leave to our audience or retail investors?
Sure. Listen, I think this is an exciting space, not only for you as an investor, but I think you're going to see it in your everyday life. And, the one question I would have you ask yourself is, the world isn't static. Why would we be putting static LiDAR systems into cars? The world is dynamic, and, we believe that we have the only adaptive LiDAR system. We'd love for you to take this journey with us.
Well, I'm going to definitely post that bullet video, and I'm excited to see what other videos you guys put out. If you guys haven't already checked out their YouTube channel, AEye, and again, for our listeners who aren't watching this, it's spelled AEye.
And it's .ai for our website, not
Yes, it is.
.com.
Clever. Well, Blair, again, thank you for generously giving us your time. This was incredibly informative. And there's a lot for us to digest, and I sure hope that we're able to connect and do something like this again in the near future as a follow-up.
Yeah, listen, thank you for the time. Thank you for the questions, and have a great day.
Absolutely.
Bye, Blair.
Bye.